Hello students, welcome to Eko Learners Support for WAEC and NECO candidates. I remain your literature teacher and we want to look at a non-African poem today titled Still I Rise.
Eko Learners Support, a support program of the Lagos State Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education for WAEC and NECO candidates.
Still I Rise is written by Angelou. Angelou. She's a very common poet, and I hope that you have read some of her poems. But by the end of this lesson, students or you will be able to explain the poem. You'll be able to discuss the major themes in the poem, and you will be able to identify and even use the poetic devices for creative writing. All right? So let's look at the poem. Can we read the poem together? So please get your own text and let's read together. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I have got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like the moons and like the suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hopes springing high, still I rise. Do you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my backyard? You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my ties? Out of the odds of history's shame, I rise. Up from the past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I am a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. This is a soul-lifting poem. Very inspirational, and thus important for us to look at what this poem is talking about. Using a dramatic monologue and the first person point of view, the poet persona scorns an unknown second person believed to be an impartial and jealous oppressor, whom she refers to as you constantly in the poem. Assassiness, which is boldness, a sexiness, which is a beauty, and a haughtiness, which refers to a defiance or activism, are factors that upset our oppressors believed to be racial and colonial. Maya Angelou comes from a very disturbing background. She has constantly been an object of racial oppression, slavery, and all manner of painful experiences. Maya Angelou often tries to defend the opinions and the status of the blacks, especially in America, even in the face of these shades of oppression, suppression, subjugation, and slavery. And so, it is not new that Maya Angelou's tone is highly defensive, strong, authoritative. She makes or asserts that she is the hope and voice of the black people. And against the twisted lies that have been told of the African race, she stands to uphold the strength and stories, which is the gift that she refers to in the poem, of our ancestors. Don't forget that in the opening stanza of the poem, she says, "You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies." She creates a sense of truthfulness of the blacks, the truthfulness of our heritage, the truthfulness of our culture, the originality of the black culture, and everything that the black has faced in the past, rising from a very tattered ground to a very strong, powerful continent. And then she says that the people who were their oppressors then, whom she refers to as you here, tries endlessly to write the blacks down, and not just do that, to even rewrite their history for them and tell lies about them. Some of the lies are that black men are wicked, black men are evil in their thoughts, in their behaviors, which is not actually true. So she thinks that these people are, expressing basically here the white men during our time or during the period of this poem are, being outrageously hateful in their speeches against them. And so she continues, and with the aid of repetition, she makes it clear that irrespective of what our oppressors do to her, whether they kill her with their eyes, or they shoot her with their words, or they kill her with their hatefulness, she insists that she will rise above all limitations. This is just a summary of the entire poem. Okay? Now, let's look at some of the themes in the poem. We have the theme of defiance in the face of oppression. Maya Angelou uses some powerful imageries to show us how that, irrespective of how trodden or how oppressed you are, you can stand strong and rise into your dreams, rise into your visions, rise into whatever it is that you have planned for yourself. Your hopes are not tattered. She describes herself as dirt. She says, even though you trod me like death, IRT, death, she said, like the dust, I will rise. That's a powerful simile. You cannot stop dust from rising the moment you accept to tread the ground or the floor. That tells you that it's almost automatic, that irrespective of whatever the oppressors have done to her, enslaved her, beaten her, both during the colonial period and even the post-colonial era, whatever it is that is done as a way of racial, oppression, she will definitely rise. And then we have also the power and the beauty of blackness. Don't forget that specifically in the 8th stanza, she mentions that I am the black ocean. She says that she is the hope of the black people. And she's wondrously rising, wondrously leaping like the rivers, like the tides. She uses all these images to show how powerfully the black people can rise, and how beautiful the black men are. She describes herself as ocean. It's a very beautiful sight to see. There's also the beauty of nature, because in this poem, we saw the sun, we saw the dust, we see the moon, we also see the ocean, rivers. These are things that are used to represent nature generally. And of course, there's no doubt that from this poem, we are able to see that nature is indeed beautiful. And of course, there is also the vanity of life. The vanity of life. She explains that irrespective of what is done, she will rise. But she did not deny the fact that she could be killed. She says, you may kill me. You may cut me. Whatever it is you do to me, the important thing is that I will rise. Rising here could mean a transitioning, a generational transitioning. Do not forget that she is writing now for our ancestors. The fact that she mentioned ancestors shows us that some other persons have fought before but are now dead. Trying to satirize what the white men do and trying to teach them that racism and all manner of oppression should be avoided. Because if they continue, they should know that one day, sometime soon, they would still die. They will die just like they want her to die, or they want her to be shut up. Don't forget that at a point she says, does my haughtiness upset you? Does my sassiness upset you? These are words to show that she has become bold and strong in the face of oppression. She says this because she wrote this poem at a time where her writings are beginning to gain grounds. Her voice is beginning to be, has begun to be heard, and people can now relate with what is really happening in the American society to the blacks. So she is faced with a lot of restrictions and resistance. A lot of people try to, shut her down, and that's why she said, what do you want to see? Do you want to see me bowed, my head bowed, and my shoulders falling and down? No. He said, no matter what you do, I will rise. It's a very strong poem that lifts the soul of men to go further and get their dreams and pursue their hopes. And of course, we also have the last one, which I have talked about, racial discrimination. The fact that she mentions black tells us that this fight is basically against a people of a particular race, which she shows us through the color black. And she said, well, I belong to a particular race, the blacks, and I am proud of it. He said, so if you are resisting us, because in our country we have gold mines, in our country we have oil wells, and you are trying to come at us to get whatever we want and suppress us, he said, irrespective of what you do, we will rise. So this tells us that, in a way, the fight is against people of a particular race, which is the black race. Let's look at some of the poetic devices. Number one, we have language. What's the language of this poem? The poet uses a simple diction while writing the poem in order to be understood by an average reader. Anybody who reads this poem can understand what she's saying, except for certain metaphors and symbols that she uses, like black, like the oil wells, like diamond meeting at the meeting of my tiles. What else? She also uses gold mines. Those are things that represent something more than the literal explanation. So the language is simple and easy to understand. We also have the mood and the tone. The mood of the poet is a mixture of melancholy and triumph. She's sad. She's not happy because our oppressors are not ready to give up. They have come against her again and again. It's quite gloomy and sad. However, because of the constant repetition of I'll rise, I'll rise, I'll rise. We are able to understand that she's not downtrodden. She's not defeated. She has this victorious tendency within her. So she wants to be heard. And that gives us a tone of triumph. Somebody who has won, who despite being trodden on the floor, still rises. All right? And then we also have simile. This is an indirect and implicit comparison. Of course, an indirect comparison using as or like for its comparison. And we have examples on the board. Number one, it says, but still like dust. She compares herself to dust. Two things. We know that dust means something that is dirty or irrelevant. So she has portrayed herself in the light or from the lens of the white men, how the white man sees the Africans or the blacks. Nevertheless, she also says that dust also have the capacity to what? Rise when it is trodden. Now, she also points out the issue of mortality with dust. Don't forget that it's a kind of allusion to the scripture where it says that the man was formed from the dust of the earth, and from the dust we came, unto the dust we will return. So it's saying that every man will die, whether you like it or not. And then you have, because I walk like I've got oil wells. I walk like. So here we see a picture of somebody walking luxuriantly, walking with so much confidence, because oil wells, of course, in African setting, whoever is able to obtain a oil well or an oil well is rich and wealthy. And of course, that makes him so confident of himself. Now, we also have just like moons and like suns, just like hopes springing high. She compares herself to moon, sun, and even hope that cannot be seen, using like, the word like. All right? And she said, but I'll rise. But still, like another like. She continually uses the comparison using like. Okay, can we move on and see other devices? We have imagery. Images of subjugation, slavery, and discrimination are created in the minds of the readers. Example is the phrase, the odds of shame. We have pain, we have shame, and then we also have stanza 2, stanza 5, stanza 7. We have those stanzas where she talks about shooting with your eyes, cutting me with your words, killing me with your hatefulness. Those words show that those are the things that were done to the black men during the times of slavery and oppression. They cut them sometimes they shoot them and kill them and throw them away. In fact, the picture of the ocean brings back a memory of the Atlantic slave trade. Now, pun. This is a play on words. An example is welling and swelling I bear in the tide. Welling and swelling. She repeats that sound, the sound pattern of Helen in two words, trying to just enjoy the words as she says them. I bear in the tide. Another very important device that we would find out is anaphora. And what's an anaphora? The repetition of words at the beginning of two or more consecutive lines of poetry. So you have one line, at the beginning of that line, a word is used or a phrase is used. And then at the beginning of the next line, the same word or the same phrase is used. When that happens, you say that the poet has used an anaphora. Anaphora actually means reference to something that's happened before. Now, so you see, you may shoot me with your words. Then she goes to the next line and say, you may cut me with your eyes. So you has been repeated at the beginning of successive clauses or lines. That's anaphora. And of course, that is used to emphasize who the oppressor is. the oppressor. Now, we also have cases of allusion. We have examples like out of the odds of history, shame. Don't forget that she mentions history twice. The first time she says, you may try to write me down in history. So it means that these things or this oppression did not start today. It has been. It started from, from way back in the past. And we have history's shame. I am the dream and the hope of the slave. The fact that she mentions slave also tells us that the black men were subjected to slavery. And then I am a black ocean. And this alludes to slavery and all forms of inhuman treatment of the blacks. The word ocean could imply the passage of the captured slaves through the sea from Africa into the Western world, just as I said earlier. Okay, let's look at the question here. Discuss how hyperbole advances the meaning of the poem. Discuss how hyperbole advances the meaning of the poem. So the first thing we want to do here is tell us what the poem is all about. You mentioned some of the themes I've mentioned earlier, like racial discrimination is part of it, oppression or subjugation or slavery, and then we also have mortality. We have defiance. Those are themes that you would want to mention. And then how the next paragraph must tell us what hyperbole is first, and then instances of hyperbole. So, of course, the first that you want to mention is the fact that she has oil wells digging in a living room. And oil wells for a poor average person in your room, how is that possible? That's an exaggeration. She could have some little money, but definitely not oil wells pumping in a room. As a matter of fact, for you to have a oil well in a room is almost impossible, because the room could be small for an average person who is living, and an oil well should be something of great size. So that's an hyperbole, but still trying to mock the oppressor and say that this is what they are coming for. They are just coming for our wealth. They are just coming to take our wealth, the things that we have, even though we do not really have what they want. The next, we also have diamonds at the meeting of my ties. Do not forget that earlier in this poem, she mentions sexiness and says, does my sexiness upset you? The fact that she talks about sexiness there could mean that she is beautiful. And then every African is naturally beautiful as well. And now she makes another reference again and says that there's diamonds at the meeting of our ties. That gives us a picture of somebody who is very, very rich. How can you have diamonds as beads on your tie when you are even an object of oppression and suppression? You are likely to be even poor. This is another instance of hyperbole. It's an exaggeration. You don't even have anything, but you claim to have diamonds as beads on your waist. And that creates an effect. That tells us that the white men are just being outrageous in all of their oppressions and all of their testimonies of the black. They are just being outrageous. They really do not know who the blacks are on the inside. All right? And then after you have mentioned, then you can give a conclusion Now, please note that you can read this poem and identify more devices, more instances of hyperbole, more instances of metaphors as used in the poem. Thank you very much for listening. If you have questions and comments, please reach us on our social media and those displayed on the screen.